Welcome to the Overwhelm is Optional podcast, where we cut through the fog of overwhelm so you can see all the ways to start creating a life that works for you. Have you had enough yet? This is going to be a bit of a ranty one this week. I am so sick of the current narrative that you just work. You work really, really hard for a life that to maintain requires the same amount of work as it did to create it. It's a lie, and it starts really young, really young. So, as many of you know, I used to be a teacher, and the education system, at least when I was in it, we were told as teachers that it's difficult, isn't it? Because everybody takes things in a different way. Being a really passionate person and wanting genuinely to make a difference, I bought into the narrative that education creates social change, more choice, more happiness, more freedom. And now I just think, no, it doesn't. Or it can do. I mean, education can, but the education system doesn't. And you can look at the statistics on social mobility and happiness, and you can see this. It's there. But it's the narrative that was sold to me that by overworking myself, by pushing myself really, really hard, by making all these sacrifices for the greater good. So basically being so tired I couldn't think straight and I couldn't really see what was going on. And pushing kids, with love, with genuine love, to sacrifice some of their happiness. Now, it's easy, isn't it, to say, well, why do they have to? Because you need discipline and you're growing up and adolescents wouldn't do this stuff. Yes, but there's a difference between, I don't know how we get it right. Well, I do know how we get it right, but I don't know how we get it right in the education system, which is why I'm out. And I don't want to, it's too big. It's like this big concrete tanker, which is just impossible to turn. I don't know. Some people are doing it. I'm out. I don't want this to be a political rant about the education system, because that's not where I choose to put my energy. I'm interested in how I live my life and how you get to live your life. I'm staying in my lane and being really, really focused, because this is what matters most to me. But I'm really, really sick of this current narrative that we are taught from a very young age that if you sacrifice now your happiness and your health, let's be clear about this, then you will be happier later. And yet, sitting in that beautiful building, I can't remember which building, somewhere near one of the big stations in London. I went to this amazing conference several years ago, I think it was called the Ultimate Mental Health and Wellbeing in Education Conference or something. I went to a couple of them. Absolutely amazing, inspiring. And I was sat in, it was a friend's meeting house, a really big one. And so it's a Quaker place. And I don't know that much about the Quakers, but I do know that they do this sitting in silence thing, which is just so nourishing. And the way that the conference room was not a conference room, it was a friend's meeting house. So the way it's set up is that there's three sides onto the stage. And it just felt like the eyes weren't all on the stage. It's like you're coming together as a group. Anyway, it was a perfect place to have this kind of place. It felt like a very nourishing room. And we did start each day of the conference with some silence and that deep connective silence. And just that in itself, and then listening to all these people saying, yeah, we need to change the current narrative, that actually we know deep down, and there's research on it now. I can't remember any of it now, about the fact that actually happiness comes before success, not the other way around. And yet what we're preaching at kids is that in order to be happy, you have to be successful first. Now, it's difficult to get right, isn't it? Because it does require commitment and discipline to learn new skills and new ways of doing things in order to have what we want. And there's joy in that learning and that change and that growth. So I'm not advocating laziness as in, I don't care, I've got no control over my life. It's quite the opposite. It's about agency, isn't it? It's about saying, but this doesn't feel right to me. this doesn't feel right to me. It's about being able to say that this isn't for me. And I've noticed that increasingly this is, in the end, what it comes down to for me is this deep listening, but this isn't for me. This is making me unhappy. There's a difference between tolerating discomfort. So we hear something which shakes us up. So there might be something I say and it's like, oh, not sure about that. Oh, I hadn't seen it that way. Although my aim is actually to create ease with my words, there might be something that's challenging. And that challenge can be really good because it enables your world to break open. You know, I've heard words from people like the words about the fact that even research shows that happiness comes before success, not the other way around. So happy people are more successful. I think fundamentally of everything that I've pulled together in my 53 years and everything I'm now teaching and sharing comes down to the fact that I know what's best for myself. You know what's best for you, but that we become disconnected from that. And the thing I really want to rant about today is the disconnection is caused by our current narrative about success and happiness. And I'm sick of it because it creeps back at me, and it's going to, because it is what I've tapped into as being my kryptonite, you know, wanting to live a full life and then finding that I've overloaded myself rather than living fully. Can you relate to that? So you say, yes, yes, yes. I want to be better. I want to have more joy, more space, more nice things, more great experiences, greater connection, greater health. You know, I want to be just better at everything, better at living. You know, there's so much. Life is amazing. The world is amazing. And then that high standard that I'm setting for myself to live fully in my time allocated for me, it might not be the same for you. I have a podcast, so I have a big mission to put words out into the world that heal and bring joy and make a difference. But I believe we all make a difference in how we are in the world. So if I do this in a way where to you, my words are inspiring, I hope, and you feel at ease and you feel empowered and you feel less alone, but then when my partner comes home, I'm grumpy and snappy because I've overworked in order to bring you these words, then that's not going to work for me. So fundamentally, before I get on my mission, it's about living in that alignment of how I am in the world matters, so that I'm listening to myself, so that I'm looking after myself, I'm taking enough space for myself so that when my partner comes home, I'm nice to be around, especially as I recognise that for many years, when I used to walk through the door with my stress, I'm pretty sure I was pretty grumpy. In fact, I know I was. So how you are in the world matters. You matter so much, whether you have a big mission or you just want to make the people around you happier. So I believe that we have a duty to put happiness first. Happiness first. Happiness is what life's about. It's not about getting through. Now, yes, that's really hard, isn't it? Because here in the West, you need a ton of money just to keep a roof over your head. I mean, it's just got crazy, and it just got crazier. So it's really, really hard, isn't it? And if you want to do more than just about survive, you in general, you're going to have to do something more, like greater qualifications, go for that promotion, set up a business. You know, you're going to have to do something slightly different than taking a job to pay your way through your life. Now, I know people and have friends who are really, really happy with earning money that allows them to live their life, and they're really happy with that. And these are old friends, and I remember years and years and years ago when I got a new job, and one of these friends' parents said to me, oh, it's a bit further, so it's a bit more petrol. So the immediate place they went to was, if it's going to cost you more money to change jobs, why would you change jobs? Because the ultimate aim is to have enough money coming in to live. Now, I was a bit dismissive of that at the time, but when I contemplate it now, I think, well, actually, maybe they were onto something that I was missing in my determination to live my life in a bigger, what I saw as a bigger way. Now, it's not a judgment. It's just, I know myself, and I know that I'm just a mission kind of person. I want to change the world. It's just part of my DNA. It's just how I am, which is great because I have a podcast. Woohoo! It wouldn't be here otherwise. And this podcast has touched so many people, so I'm really grateful for that. But there have been times in my life when I'd wished that I was happier, more easily satisfied with doing a job that had less responsibility, so that I could leave the job at work and go home and just get on with my life. And there's been times in my life when I have done those sort of jobs on purpose so I could do that. I've experimented with that. But I always seem to be driven to do something more than that. And recognising that in myself has been really helpful. And this is where we come back to the value of knowing ourselves, of self-awareness, of neutral noticing. Actually, I've jumped there to neutral noticing. So if we think of self-awareness as listening, of noticing what's going on for us, because that gives us the knowledge about ourselves that helps us live in a way that works for us, rather than like me trying to copy somebody else's version and it not working for me, then that's noticing, that brings self-awareness. But for me, if we don't do it neutrally, it just becomes, it's like mindfulness dissected from Buddhism, and just, you get rid of all the compassion and the love and the kindness that's in there. You need that with it. Otherwise, it just becomes I'm noticing how miserable I am. I'm noticing how I need to be better at that. I'm noticing how rubbish I am at getting stuff done, that I really procrastinate. I'm noticing my tendency to get really tired and give up. I'm noticing that's not helpful. That's really unhelpful, isn't it? Whose side are you on? Be on your own side. And that's why I love neutral noticing, because it brings in that just notice. Just be an observer of your life, looking at yourself without judgment. And what's going on for you right now? And then, for me, on top of that, there's the listening to the body. In the same way, still neutral noticing, but it's purposely very focused on the body, because the body has so much to weigh in. And then there's the connecting to the heart, because in the end, it's all about the heart, isn't it? It's all about feeling happy. Everything we do, all the decisions we make are so that we will feel happy. It's a feeling. And that deep joy. And for me, as I've got older, it's become more and more about this kind of equanimity, this ability to stop being on such a roller coaster, because I feel everything really deeply, so I can easily just get almost like too much emotional energy going through me all the time. So for me, as I've got older, it's been the ability to go with that and allow space for it, and then be able to pause rather than let it all come out at someone, whether it's happiness or anger or, so it's that one of my favorite words, equanimity, that ability to pause and notice and be less reactive. So it's the ability to respond rather than react, which if you caught last week's episode, I love the way Jennifer Wheeler describes that ability. It's like this gap, this pause is a gap between the stimuli, the fluff on the left out of the tumble dryer, or the traffic jam, or the printer jamming, or the computer not working properly, and the response. And it's lovely, isn't it, when you go, my computer's crashed again. Neutral, noticing. But when we do that with the body, that's really helpful. And then connecting to the heart. The heart really has the answers that we seek about how to live, about how to be happy. But if we just follow our hearts, we could end up without a roof over our head. So it's really, really helpful to have the listening to the body for energy, for health, for greater well-being, but also for you can feel boundaries being crossed in your body. You can, there's all sorts of things. I can't go into all of that in this episode. This is what we do inside Get Your Life Back. We go in deep with this stuff. So I just want to get back into my rant about the current narrative. Which narrative, Heidi? The long-standing one about the fact that even though we live in, actually do live in times with less violence and less all sorts of things, less poverty. There's a, can't remember what the, I don't know if it's not, I think you can go to like Our World in Data, or like there are big sites where they've accumulated data and you can check stuff out, and there is less violence, less poverty, less all sorts of things than there ever has been in history, or not in, we don't know, do we? Nobody was sitting there counting stuff, but you know, things are better than they seem because, well, the media is not there to create happiness, let's face it. So things are better, but we're still in this kind of keep going in case I don't have a roof over my head, in case I don't have food in my belly, in case I get eaten by a bear. We're still going with that because that's what's driven us for a long time. So we're still doing this thing, aren't we, of work really hard so you'll be safe. Work really hard so you can have more freedom. Work really hard so later you can be happy. Later you can rest. Later you can have time for yourself. Later. And I'm going to tell you a story about why I'm so driven against that narrative. So, I grew up with a father who did the Open University, and then he did his vicar's degree. And at the same time, they were renovating a house. And then he just kept working really hard. And I always heard him talking about, when I retire, I'll do this. When I retire. And he died just after his 59th birthday. So he spent a lot of his time waiting. Now, that doesn't mean that he didn't do a lot of the stuff he wanted to do, but that narrative of you sacrifice in order to be happy. And it wasn't the happiest home to grow up in. So I did my utmost to rebel against this. And here's what happened. I did go to university, but I dropped out because I didn't quite know why I was there or how to be there, because there wasn't a tradition of going to university from my family. And that's quite common for my generation. So I finished my degree later through the Open University. I am now renovating a house while working from home in a business that isn't yet at the point where I have the kind of money to pay somebody else to do the huge dreams we have for this house. So it's not exactly the same as the kind of, I used to run up the stairs in our house pulling wallpaper off on the way up the stairs. And I remember the summer my father built an extension with the local builder. There was quite a lot of stress. There was quite a lot of stress around money when I was growing up. There was a lot of, there's just a lot of stress. It's stressful, isn't it? Raising children, renovating a house, finishing a degree, then doing more studying. And I did my best to avoid that. And what did I do? There are elements of that have crept into my life despite my absolute best to do the opposite. I still ended up with the finishing my degree through the Open University while raising 2 children. And you'll laugh now, because actually I remember sitting writing a report. So that's a piece of research, psychology research. Writing it up, it took me 13 hours, and I'm not sure if the builders were there or it was a Saturday. I think it was a Saturday, but they were, there was like this construction site to the side of my house, because I was having this conservatory. It was an extension on the side of my house. This is my previous home. And I was raising 2 children. I'm working, obviously. What is going on here? So part of what drives me, because then after I finished that degree, I then went on to do more, because I then went on to teach maths. So then I had to do a ton of maths studying. So, and then I ended up doing the exact opposite of what had always been my intention. I ended up in a career, in a job that demanded that I sacrifice my life. And that is what I'd spent my life trying to avoid doing. But for me, it was this attraction of doing meaningful work and having what I thought at the time was really good money. Now looking back, I think at no point did it ever really become good money. It just never quite, it was never worth the sacrifice. It just didn't work out in that way. And I think that's really common for a lot of us, isn't it? That we never quite reach that point that we're promised. We're sold a lie that we never quite get there, wherever there is, that place, that imaginary place where we have what we set out. So we set off on this adventure and we work really hard and we imagine this life and we never quite get there, because partly because we're not paying attention. I do believe that. I believe that there is so much goodness right now. If you just looked around and were grateful for everything you had, then you would find so much richness. If you have a roof over your head, that there's food in your belly, you're listening to this podcast, so you have internet access, you have a device to listen to the podcast, there's so much to be grateful for. So there are always opportunities to say, actually, I have arrived, and to notice that arrival. But there's also a problem with the current narrative, which states that you have no right to not work hard and be happy. That's what it feels like to me. You don't get to be happy unless you keep working. And that's where it gets difficult to take time for ourselves, because when we take time for ourselves, what we're saying is, my work is done for this moment. In this moment, I choose not to think about work, not to think about all of the things the house needs doing, not to think about the car and the fact that it needs an MOT, not to think about the fact my house insurance needs renewing, not to think that I really ought to phone that person, or I ought to walk my dog, or I ought to train my dog better, or I ought to really read that book because I need that information in order to be better at this. When we take time for ourselves, real time for ourselves, when we let go of all of this, need to get stuff done, need to not let anyone else down, need to preempt and keep ourselves safe from a future disaster where we forgot to do something important. That kind of time for yourself, it's really hard to take that time for ourselves, because it's just this current narrative about you don't get to do that. That's not possible. It doesn't exist. There isn't a narrative about that. It's made too big a deal of. So yes, we get advertised to about things like holidays, classic thing, really stressful to organise, really stressful. You have to book time out, you have to have permission to have that experience. And then we're promised this experience of freedom, of time freedom, of ease, of lack of overwhelm, of headspace, of connection, of fun, of joy, of warmth, of health, of luxury. We're promised all of this in a holiday, and then it's a special event. And often holidays are quite stressful, even when they're not stressful, even when they're really, really good. It's a special event. And it's great to have special events, but what about right now, every single day? We deserve to be happy. I deserve to be happy. I deserve to have a life where I just get to be me. I get to be happy. You deserve that. You can't schedule this stuff in all the time. Yes, there's a place for scheduling. Definitely there's a place for scheduling. I've booked in a ton of time off this year, a ton of opportunity for holiday, not too rigidly, because I really don't like having everything rigidly scheduled. That's the point, isn't it? The freedom was not to rigidly schedule everything. The point of freedom, the point of working so hard and having sacrificed so much to get here, wherever here is for you, is that you get to choose. You get to live in a way that works for you. That was the point of being the person who revised for the exam, who went for the promotion, who went for the interview, who filled out all those job application forms, who set up the business, who got those clients, who created this thing and dared to sell it. Like, the point was to have more freedom. The point was to have more choice than people who didn't choose to do that. That was the point. Work hard and you will have more choice. Work hard and you will have more freedom, because you'll have more money, and you'll have more job satisfaction. And what actually happens? We surf this verge of breakdown. We have huge joy there, but it's difficult to feel because it's so transitory. We can miss it because we're so overwhelmed, we're disconnected from it. I have had enough. I've had enough of this narrative. It's one of the big reasons. It wasn't just the fact that being in education destroyed my health. One of the big things was I couldn't do it anymore. It felt like a lie, and I am crap at lying. I just don't have that. It probably gets me into a lot of trouble. My close friends know, I just don't have the ability to lie. And I'm valued for that. But, that means that it's very difficult for me to do work that doesn't feel true, that doesn't feel integral. I can't do it. And it's partly what inspired this episode, because right now I am in the middle of launching Get Your Life Back Again. And every time I go to launch this program that I know works, that I love, that is everything that I was looking for when I needed it a few years ago. And it is my joy. I get to teach. I was talking to a close friend the other day and she said, but you are still a teacher. And she's right. I get to teach what I want to teach, the stuff that to me makes most sense, makes my impact in the world in my unique way. And I love my program, but every time I go to open it, I get bombarded with you haven't done enough to reach the people like you who need it. You haven't done enough. You're not good enough. Your words aren't good enough. Your effort is lacking. It's like this bombardment. And I've realised that this happens. I did an episode on how I survived the overwhelm of launching I think it was in September. And this is what happens every time I go to do something which I feel is big and important. All of that current narrative slams itself at me. I get bombed with it. I wake up to my thoughts bombing me with, you could do more. You could do better. And that comes from that. That's because this is my work. So because I've set up my business, I've set up my life and my business completely intertwined as an experiment. How can I do my work in my way at this point in time, so who I am right now, because we all change, don't we, and grow, How can I have my meaningful impact on the world for good, be of service, take my unique skills and be happy? Which means for me, having time to go outside in the daylight. So it doesn't work for me being in employment where it's really, really hard to do that. It just doesn't work. That's not what I want to do. I rebel against that. I get quite angry about it. And then that anger goes inwards into resentment because I can't find the space to be outside enough. It's just so important to me. So having identified that, I now choose to live in this way, which means that I choose to live with the constant need to be visible, to put my message out into the world, even though as an introvert, that's not my thing. I choose to record this. Actually, the podcast is different. It's very different. I don't feel like this is difficult. I love that I get to record this and talk to you. It just feels very different than doing video and social media. I think it's the social media thing. I'm just a bit kind of like at 53, still not getting what that's about. It's still slightly jars. It's kind of weird, right? It's like, why would I want to be on Instagram? I'm really struggling with Facebook, especially since they renamed themselves. It just feels like the most ironic, ridiculous, sad, bonkers, crazy name. But anyway, back to this. For me, the whole thing is, how do we live in a way that really works for us? How? Not can I? Yes, you can. I firmly believe you can, but how? And for me, that's when it's worth doing the work. And the work for me is this tuning into and listening deeply to what you really want. And that's what we do inside Get Your Life Back. It's deeply, deeply transformative. But we get most of the work done in the first 12 weeks, because I know that sustaining that level of commitment for longer than that, it's just too damn hard. But 12 weeks is a good time, because it takes about 3 months, doesn't it, to get habits embedded. And anyway, so yes, this is where I am. I'm in the middle of, how do I reach more people, to invite the right people into my program, because I love it and it works and it's my mission and that makes me happy. How do I do it and stay true to my central mission, which is to do it in a way that works for me? And every time I go into, higher visibility mode, the two things collide, which enables me to do it better and better and better. But when I'm in it, it doesn't feel so much fun, because what I really want to do is just reach people really easily. Just do it. Just invite you in. Just say, come on in, come and see. It's wonderful. So what I've decided to do, because for me, it's like, it's always, the question is going to be, how can I do it with most fun and most ease? So this morning I came up with it was quite funny. I thought, right, to celebrate Get Your Life Back opening, the doors open the 23rd, next Wednesday. So to celebrate and to invite you in to the Get Your Life Back world, so you can experience it and gain, whether I don't sell. It's not a selling thing. It's a invitation, and a invitation to listen to yourself and make the appropriate decision for you. This is about you. And in order to do that, I thought, okay, so let's just invite people to come and hang out and do a masterclass that's really helpful, whether they decide to join or not, because that's, your time's really precious, as is mine. And I thought, right, what can I call it? And I was like, the secret rebellion. The secret rebellion. How cool would that be? And then I realised, as I put it into the page thing, I realised it would come up everywhere as The Secret Rebellion, and I thought the chances of that getting through current filters on social media, that's not going to work. Oh, so funny. Let me explain though why I wanted to call it The Secret Rebellion, and then I'll tell you what actually I'm calling it The Secret Listeners instead. If you want to find out more, you just go to www.heidimark.co.uk/The Secret Listener. Listener, not listeners, I've just realised. The listener. So The Secret Listener, and you will find it. But the reason I wanted to call it The Secret Rebellion is because, as you can see, I'm quite rebellious. But what I find is when I get really feisty and rebellious, it just creates chaos. And that leads to more overwhelm and exhaustion. And it's just too much. It's like, oh, Heidi, do it in a different way. So what I really, really needed when I was heading for burnout, but really thought I wasn't, thought I was handling it really well, because I was handling it really well, but I was kind of patching myself up to just prolong the agony in a way. But anyway, what I really, really needed was ways to take time for myself in the day, to sort myself out, to have the headspace to see what was going on, to be able, what I really needed was to be able to sit back and get an overview. And that's what we do in the first module of Get Your Life Back. But I needed to do it secretly, because if I did it in a way that demanded, I looked at one course, it was a mindfulness course, and I would have had to drive for an hour on a Monday night to sit in a hall for 2 hours and drive an hour back. It was too much. I couldn't do it. It was exhausting. It was like, that's not going to work. And also I needed to do something that would support me while I did it. And also that nobody really noticed. It was so, there's something for me there about being able to sort myself out in private so that I could keep my professional standing, that I could, just get myself together in private, because first of all, it's none of anybody's damn business when I wasn't coping, because some days I was coping, and also I had a lot of responsibility. So me not coping would have been completely, the ripple effect would have been hopeless. It also would have destroyed everything I'd worked so hard for, which was to be in a position where I could make things work better, where I could support. That was so important to me. I was so dedicated to that. I was so grateful to have that opportunity. That was where my work satisfaction was coming from. If I lost that by having a meltdown, which I obviously did eventually, but it was unhelpful. So I needed things, and I constantly looked for things, and that's when I tried so many things, like getting up earlier to meditate, and then just being so tired. It just didn't work for me. So for me, it's this secrecy, this privacy is so important, and I know it's important to you, because being able to just have that knowledge and power to do things in a way that works for you, that's what it's about for me. And that's what the whole of my philosophy is, and the whole of Get Your Life Back is that it fits into your life while you learn. Anyway, I'd like to invite you to this free masterclass where I will talk about how to become, I had to change it from The Secret Rebellion because I thought it would get knocked off social media, to The Secret Listener, because it is about tuning in and listening to yourself secretly. You don't have to discuss this stuff with anyone. You can just learn. So if you'd like to come along to that, I really, really hope you will. I record it, so if you can't make it, it's Wednesday the 23rd at 7 p.m. If you can't make it, please still register, because then you can have the recording. You can look at it in your own time. But if what I'm saying is resonating with you, if you've been absorbing all my free stuff for some time and you know that I'm speaking to you, please don't miss the opportunity. So tomorrow I've got the tomorrow I've got the Time for You paid masterclass, which comes with help and support to find more time for you. And it's about changing your relationship with time. so that you can think clearly and see what's going on. But if you want, and that's, that's there for you. And then there's also this opportunity of joining me for a free masterclass where we talk about how to secretly rebel by listening deeply to ourselves. And that gives you the opportunity to take that next step from the podcast, from being on my mailing list. It gives you the opportunity to hang out with me and just be taught by a very experienced, knowledgeable teacher, to have that gift for yourself. So either by investing in the paid masterclass, it's only £97, very, very good value for what you will receive. And then why not do both? So anyway, that's there for you, because you can listen to my podcast, but at some point you have to decide, do I want more than this? And I would like to invite you into Get Your Life Back so that you can have more. And to help you decide that, I would come to the free masterclass at www.heidimark.co.uk, The Secret Listener. Right, I hope you've enjoyed my rant this week. My voice is starting to go, isn't it? The current narrative, if there's lots of current narratives, but I'm talking about the long-standing current narrative that you sacrifice now for some future, imaginary future, where you can have more freedom, more ease, more choice, more security, basically happiness. And yet we never quite get there because we get stuck in that, pushing ourselves too hard, not listening when our hearts start kind of breaking, but we're not really aware of it because, wow, this is how things are done. If you're surrounded by people, I was surrounded by people who would just go, well, that's just the way things are, Heidi. That's just the way things are. Is it? Didn't you want more than that? I wanted more, and I want more, and I want to shake this up. So come and join me at The Secret Listener. Have a great week. Hello, thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Overwhelm is Optional podcast. It's so good to have you here with me. Just a quick reminder about the upcoming masterclass called the Time for You Masterclass. It's at heidimark.co.uk/time for you. And I'll also put the link in the show notes. I'd love to see you there.